Get out of my house. Pack your things and leave. You have nothing here. You came with nothing, you will go with nothing. But Mama, I have nowhere to go. Did I ask you where you will go? You are not my problem. You are never my problem. My son deserves better. Now leave before I remove you myself. That was the day Ngozi walked out of that compound with one bag, one wrapper, and a heart so broken she could not even cry. No money, no family nearby, nowhere to go. Just the road in front of her and the gate closing behind her. And the woman who closed it, Mama Chioma, stood at the entrance and watched her go. No guilt, no hesitation, just satisfaction. Because in her mind, she had won. Her son Emeka had married Ngozi 3 years before, against her wishes. She had told him from the beginning, this girl is not good enough. She comes from nothing. She will bring you nothing. But Emeka did not listen. He married her quietly, brought her home, and for 3 years, Mama Chioma made that girl's life inside that house a silent war. She controlled the food, she controlled the money, she spoke to her son every night, planting doubt, reshaping what he saw, turning small things into evidence of failure. And slowly, it worked. Because Emeka was a good man, but he was also a son who could not see what his mother was doing until it was already done. By the time Ngozi was removed from that house, Emeka barely recognized who he had become. He did not throw her out himself, but he did not stop it either. And sometimes, silence is the loudest betrayal. Ngozi left with nothing because she had nothing that Mama Chioma could not take. But there was one thing that woman did not account for. She did not account for time. This is the story of what happens when a mother mistakes cruelty for love and when God allows the person you threw away to become the very thing you cannot survive without. Stay with me. To understand what Mama Chioma destroyed, you first have to understand what Ngozi and Emeka were. They did not meet by accident. They grew up on the same street in Enugu, 2 compounds apart, same neighborhood, same kind of family. Ngozi's father was a tailor. Emeka's father drove a government bus. Neither family had much, but both families had dignity. And in that neighborhood, dignity counted for more than money. Emeka noticed Ngozi the way quiet people notice things, slowly, then completely. She was the kind of woman who did not try to be seen, but was impossible to ignore. She was calm in a way that felt like strength, not weakness. She laughed at the right moments. She knew when to speak and when to sit still. And she was kind, genuinely, practically kind. The kind that showed up with food when someone was sick without being asked. They became friends first, then something more. And by the time Emeka was ready to call it what it was, it had already been years in the making. He brought her home to meet her mother, and that was where everything changed. Mama Chioma took one look at Ngozi and made a decision before the girl had finished greeting her. She smiled that day. She offered her food. She called her my daughter with a warmth that felt real. But after Ngozi left, she turned to Emeka and said one sentence that should have been a warning. She is too quiet. Quiet women are hiding something. Emeka laughed it off. He thought his mother just needed time. She did not need time. She had already decided. Mama Chioma was a woman who had sacrificed everything for her son. Her marriage was not a happy one. Her husband died young and left her with Emeka, one child, one chance. All her hopes folded into one person. She had worked selling provisions for 15 years to put him through school. She had gone without so he could have. And because of that sacrifice, she had convinced herself that she had earned the right to choose what was good for him. The problem was not that she loved him too much. The problem was that her love had no room for anyone she had not approved. When Emeka announced the marriage, she did not shout, she did not fight. She simply withdrew into a silence that felt like acceptance, but was actually preparation. She gave them a room in her house because she understood, correctly, that keeping them close was more powerful than pushing them away. And for 3 years, she used that proximity as a weapon. every conversation she had with Emeka was carefully shaped. She never attacked Ngozi directly. She was too wise for that. Instead, she asked questions, small questions, gentle questions. Did you notice she didn't greet your uncle properly last Sunday? Do you think she's comfortable here because she seems distant lately? I'm not saying anything. I just want to make sure you're happy. That was how she walked, not with accusations, with seeds. And Emeka, who trusted his mother the way sons trust the person who raised them through hunger and hardship, did not see the soil being turned beneath his feet. Ngozi saw it, but she had no language for it that Emeka would accept. Every time she tried to speak about it, it became an argument about respect, and eventually she stopped speaking at all. That silence, Ngozi's silence, was what Mama Chioma had been waiting for. Because once a woman stops speaking, she becomes easy to remove. The eviction did not happen in one day. It was built brick by brick over months. It started with money. Emeka had a good job, an accounting position at a construction firm in the city. He brought his salary home faithfully, and for a while, that salary passed through Ngozi's funds because she managed the household. She bought food, paid the light bill, kept things running. She was organized and careful, and she never wasted. Mama Chioma noticed this, and she did not like it. Not because Ngozi was doing it badly, but because Ngozi was doing it well. Because a woman who manages a home well is a woman who becomes necessary. And a woman who becomes necessary is a woman who stays. She started talking to Emeka about it, slowly, carefully, the way she always did. She told him that a man should control his own money, that giving a woman full access was dangerous, that she had seen marriages destroyed because a wife learned how to hide funds. She did not say Ngozi was hiding anything, she simply planted the image and let Emeka's imagination do the rest. Within 2 months, Emeka asked for the account access back. He did not explain why, he just said he wanted to manage things himself. Ngozi agreed without argument, but something shifted in her chest that day, a small cold thing that had not been there before. Mama Chioma began to schedule family visits on weekends when Ngozi's friends would normally come, prayers in the evenings that ran long enough to exhaust any conversation, chores assigned in a way that kept Ngozi inside the compound while Emeka went out, socialized, breathed. It was never aggressive. There was always a reason, and the reason always sounded reasonable. Ngozi's friends stopped coming because they always seemed to arrive at the wrong time. Her own mother lived 2 states away and could not visit easily. And slowly, without anyone announcing it, Ngozi found herself alone inside a house full of people. That kind of loneliness is a particular cruelty because you cannot name it, you cannot point to it, you can only feel it expanding inside you day after day until it starts to look like it belongs to you, like the problem is something you are carrying rather than something being done to you. Then came the pregnancy. Ngozi conceived in the 2nd year of their marriage. She told Emeka first, and he was happy, genuinely, visibly happy. For a moment, the tension in the house softened. Even Mama Chioma smiled when she heard. But that smile did not last. Because a grandchild meant Ngozi would become permanent. A grandchild meant roots. A grandchild meant that no matter what happened between Emeka and his wife, there would always be a reason for her to remain connected to that family. And Mama Chioma could not allow that. 3 weeks after the pregnancy was announced, Ngozi lost the baby. The doctor said it was a natural miscarriage. Stress, they said. Rest more, they said. These things happen. And they do happen. That is what makes it impossible to question. But the stress they were referring to, nobody named its source. Emeka was sad for a week. Then life continued. And Mama Chioma moved through the house with the same quiet authority she always had, as if nothing had been lost, as if the grief in that room was a weather condition that would pass. Ngozi did not recover the same way. Something in her went quiet after that, quieter than before. She began to move through the house like a woman who had accepted a truth she could not say out loud. And in that acceptance, Mama Chioma saw her final opportunity. She went to Emeka one evening, sat beside him, and she spoke to him the way only a mother who has suffered can speak, softly, patiently, with tears she had prepared like a weapon. She said, "My son, I have been watching and I am worried. I don't think this woman is meant for you." She did not need to say more. The seeds she had planted for 2 years were already roots. 2 weeks later, Ngozi's bag was packed. The morning it happened was a Tuesday. Emeka had gone to work. Mama Chioma waited until the gate closed behind his car. Then she walked into Ngozi's room without knocking. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She simply placed an empty bag on the bed and said, "Start packing. You have 1 hour." Ngozi looked at her and asked one question. "Does Emeka know?" Mama Chioma did not answer. She turned and walked out. That answer was enough. Ngozi packed slowly because her hands would not cooperate. She packed the things that were hers: a few clothes, her Bible, a small photograph of her and Emeka on better days. She left the jewelry he had bought her. She left the wrapper sets and the shoes and all the things that had been given as gifts. She did not want to carry anything that could later be called stolen. She walked out of that compound carrying almost nothing, and behind her, the gate closed. She stood on that road for a long time, not because she did not know where to go, but because the moment you step away from the thing you thought was your life, the ground does not feel solid. You have to teach yourself in real time that you are still standing. She called her mother. Her mother cried. Then her mother said, "Come home." And she did. Ngozi spent 6 months at her mother's house in a state that was not quite grief and not quite numbness. It was something in between, the feeling of a life that has been interrupted mid-sentence and does not know yet how to continue. But she was not a woman who stayed in that feeling long. She had completed a diploma in health administration before she married. She had never used it. She dusted it off. She applied for a job at a private clinic in Abuja. She got it. She moved. She started again. Not from the beginning, because nothing is ever fully from the beginning, but from whatever ground remained beneath her feet. She worked. She studied. She passed the exams that qualified her to manage healthcare facilities. She moved upward the way people move who have nothing to lose, carefully, consistently, without distraction. She did not think about Emeka every day, but she thought about the gate, the sound it made when it closed behind her, the weight of it. She used that sound the way some people use prayer, a reminder of what she had survived and what she had decided to become because of it. 15 years passed, and in those 15 years, the woman who had been thrown out with nothing became the woman who ran everything. In Enugu, the woman who threw her out was about to learn what time does to people who mistake power for permanence. After Ngozi left, Mama Chioma's life looked exactly the way she had wanted it to look. Her son was free, her house was peaceful, she had full access to Emeka's attention, his income, his decisions. For a while, she walked through that compound with the quiet authority of a woman who had played a long game and won. But a house built on removal is not a house. It is a temporary arrangement. Emeka remarried within 18 months. This time, Mama Chioma chose, or believed she chose. The woman's name was Adaide, and she came from a family Mama Chioma respected. The right surname, the right church, the right kind of quiet. What Mama Chioma did not understand was that there are different kinds of quiet. Ngozi's quiet had been strength. Adaize's quiet was strategy. Adaize studied Mama Chioma for 6 months without blinking. She watched how the woman moved, she watched what she valued and what she feared. She learned the architecture of that house, not the rooms and corridors, but the invisible architecture. Who held what, where the power lived. And then slowly, over 2 years, she restructured it. By the time Mama Chioma understood what had happened, Emeka had taken a transfer to Lagos. Then Adaize suggested Port Harcourt. Then an opportunity came in the UK, a 2-year contract that became 5, then became permanent. He visited once a year, then once every 2 years. He sent money faithfully, enough to keep his conscience clear. But the son who had sat beside his mother every evening and received her counsel was gone. He had been replaced by a voice on the phone who was always busy, always about to be somewhere, always just about to call back. Mama Chioma had spent 20 years keeping Emeka close by removing every woman who might take him away. And in the end, it was a woman she had approved who took him furthest. The body failing in her 63rd year. It began with her knees, then her back, then her blood pressure, which the doctor monitored carefully and then urgently, and then with the kind of concerned tone that means the situation has moved past management into something else. She had savings, but not enough. Medical care is expensive when you are managing it alone, and Mama Chioma had spent her years investing in a son rather than in any infrastructure of her own. No business, no property in her name. Her identity had been entirely organized around him, and now he was in another country and the money he sent barely covered the rent. She reached out to relatives. Some helped for a while, then their own lives pulled them back. She reached out to her church. The pastor prayed. Prayer is not free, he reminded her, referring to a welfare fund that had conditions she could not easily meet. She reached out to Emeka. He sent what he could, but what he could send was not what was needed, and what was needed grew every month. The worst was not the money. The worst was the silence. Not silence like absence. Silence like irrelevance. The feeling that the world has continued moving and you have been left standing in a place that no longer appears on any map. She sat in that compound, the same compound she had defended so fiercely, and she thought about the years. She thought about the decisions. And somewhere in that thinking, a face kept returning. Not Adaize. Not the relatives who stopped calling, not the pastor. Ngozi. She thought about Ngozi the way you think about a thing you discarded and now cannot find when you need it. Not with love, not yet. With the particular discomfort of a person who is beginning to understand the cost of what they did. She had heard, through the kind of grapevine that operates efficiently in Igbo communities regardless of distance, that Ngozi was doing well. That she was in Abuja, that she ran something, a hospital facility or something like that. She wasn't sure. She had dismissed the information the first time she heard it, told herself it was exaggeration. People always exaggerate the success of people they want to use to prove something. But now, in this compound, with her knees aching and her account balance something she checked less often because of what she found there, she thought about it differently. She had thrown that girl out with nothing, and the girl had become something. The question that sat in her chest now, heavy, unwelcome, impossible to put down, was whether that something included mercy. It was her neighbor's daughter who made the connection. The young woman had gone to Abuja for work and returned with news about a healthcare facility there. Well run, well respected, known for treating patients with dignity, regardless of their ability to pay immediately.
She mentioned the name of the director. And when Mama Chioma heard it, she went still. Ngozi Emeka Okafor. The surname was different because Ngozi had reverted to her maiden name after the marriage ended. But the first name was enough. She asked the girl to confirm it. The girl confirmed it. She even showed her a photograph from the facility's page online. A professional portrait, the kind taken for institutions. Ngozi in a navy blazer, her expression calm, her bearing exactly as Mama Chioma remembered it. Quiet, steady, impossible to ignore. Mama Chioma sat with that image for a long time. Then she did something that cost her more than any of the money she no longer had. She asked for help getting there. The journey to Abuja took everything she had left, emotionally, physically, financially. She arrived at the facility in the early afternoon, walking slowly with a cane, her knees carrying her but barely. The building was not extravagant, but it was serious. Clean lines, organized. The kind of place that says, the person in charge here does not tolerate disorder. She told the receptionist she was looking for the director. She gave her name. The receptionist asked if she had an appointment. She did not. She was asked to wait. She waited for 40 minutes in a chair near the entrance, watching nurses move through corridors, watching patients arrive and be attended to, watching a system that someone had built from a clear and disciplined mind. And in that waiting, something happened inside her that she had not planned for. She began to understand the size of what she had thrown away. Not just for Emeka, for herself. Because the woman running this place, the woman who walked out of her compound with one bag, would have been her daughter. Would have sat beside her at Christmas, would have called on her birthday, would have been the person who checked whether the blood pressure medication had been refilled. None of that had happened because she had decided 15 years ago that this woman was not good enough. She was still sitting with that thought when the receptionist called her name.
Ngozi's office was at the end of a short corridor. The door was open. She was at her desk, writing. She looked up when Mama Chioma appeared in the doorway. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. There is a particular kind of silence that happens when two people who have unfinished business between them finally stand in the same room. It is not empty silence. It is full. It contains everything that was never said, every door that closed, every year that passed. Ngozi stood. She did not smile, but she did not harden either. She simply looked at this woman, older now, slower, smaller than memory had made her, and she said, "Mama, sit down." That word, Mama, broke something open in the room. Mama Chioma sat, and she tried to speak, and what came out first was not words, but the kind of sound a person makes when they have been holding something for 15 years and the container finally gives. She wept properly, without dignity, the kind of crying that does not care who is watching. And Ngozi sat across from her and waited. She did not rush her. She did not comfort her with false words. She simply allowed her the space to arrive at the truth she had carried all the way from Enugu. When Mama Chioma could finally speak, she said, "I know I have no right to be here. I know what I did. I came because I have nowhere else to go. And I know that is exactly what I deserve." Ngozi was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Tell me what you need." Not, "I forgive you." Not, "Don't worry about the past." Just tell me what you need. Because real mercy is not the absence of memory. It is the decision to act anyway, even while the memory is still present. Mama Chioma told her. The hospital, the knees, the blood pressure, the cost, the son far away. All of it came out slowly,
in pieces, like a woman removing stones from a wound she had been pretending wasn't there. Ngozi listened to all of it. Then she picked up her phone and made 2 calls. The first call was to the admissions unit. She arranged for Mama Chioma to be seen that same afternoon. Full assessment, blood work, a review with the orthopedic consultant who managed the facility's joint cases. She did this quietly, without ceremony, the way a professional handles a problem that has a solution. The second call was to Emeka. She had not spoken to him in 15 years. She did not know what she would find on the other end of that number, whether it still worked, whether he would answer, whether the sound of her voice would be welcome or a wound reopened. He answered on the 3rd ring. When he heard her voice, he said nothing for several seconds. Then he said her name once, the way you say the name of something you thought you had permanently lost. She did not give him time to be sentimental. She told him plainly that her mother was at her facility in Abuja, that she needed medical attention that would require funding, that he needed to make arrangements. There was another silence. Then he said, "Ngozi, why are you doing this?" She said, "Because she is somebody's mother and because it is the right thing to do." She ended the call. The medical review confirmed what the body had already been announcing for months. The knees required intervention, not immediately, but soon. The blood pressure needed consistent management and monitoring. Left unaddressed, both conditions would compound. She would be admitted for 3 days for stabilization, then followed up as an outpatient with a care plan that the facility would manage. Mama Chioma sat in the examination room after the doctor left and stared at the wall. Then she turned to Ngozi, who had accompanied her, and said, "Why didn't you turn me away?" Ngozi considered the question as though it deserved real consideration. Then she said, "I thought about it. When they told me your name at the reception desk, I thought about it." Mama Chioma asked, "What stopped you?" Ngozi said, "I remembered the gate." She paused, then she continued. "That gate closing behind me was the day I decided who I was going to become. I decided I was going to become someone who did not close gates on people. Not because I'm a saint, but because I knew what it cost me when it was done to me, and I refused to carry that forward." Mama Chioma looked at her, and what she saw in that face was not bitterness and not performance. It was something simpler and harder. A woman who had made a decision about herself and kept it. She said quietly, "I destroyed your marriage." Ngozi said, "You tried to, but you also freed me." That was not forgiveness as absolution. It was something more honest, an acknowledgement that damage had been done and that the person who survived it had chosen what to carry and what to set down. Mama Chioma asked about Emeka, whether she still... Ngozi stopped her gently. "That chapter is closed," she said. "What is open is this. You need care. My facility can provide it. That is what we are doing here." Emeka flew in 10 days later. He sat in his mother's room at the facility and held her hand and said nothing for a long time. Then he asked to see Ngozi. She met him in the corridor outside. He looked older. Not worse, just different, the way people look when life has processed them. He said, "I'm sorry for what she did, for what I allowed, for not calling more than 3 times." Ngozi nodded once. She said, "Take care of her. She needs you present, not just paying." He nodded. He started to say something else, something that sounded like it was building toward a longer conversation. She said gently but clearly, "Emeka, go be with your mother." He went. She stood in that corridor for a moment after he turned the corner. Then she straightened her blazer, picked up the folder she had been carrying, and walked back towards her office. She had work to do. Mama Chioma spent 3 days in the facility and then 12 weeks as an outpatient. The knees were managed, the blood pressure stabilized, the care plan was followed. And slowly, In the way that bodies respond to being properly attended to, she began to improve. Emeka came back for the second follow-up visit, and the third. The UK contract had ended, and he had decided, quietly, to return to Nigeria permanently. He rented a flat in Abuja. He found work. He brought his mother to live with him. It was not a grand restoration. It was not a reunion with music and celebration. It was just a son sitting beside his mother at breakfast, learning how to be present in a way he had not been for 15 years, and a mother learning that the love she had always had for him was never the problem, only what she had done in its name. She never returned to that compound in Enugu. There was nothing there she needed. The neighborhood in Enugu had its own version of what happened. The story passed through the grapevine the way all such stories do, changed slightly at every telling, but carrying the essential truth in its center. People said, "You see that woman who chased away her son's wife? That same woman ended up at that wife's hospital." Some added details, some subtracted them, but the moral was always the same, and everyone who heard it understood it. Because people understand this story even when no one has told it to them. They have seen versions of it. They have lived versions of it. And when karma moves so completely, when the circle closes so exactly, something in people recognizes it as truth even before they know the details. Ngozi did not speak publicly about what had happened. She did not post about it. She did not tell her staff more than what they needed to know, that an elderly patient had come in for care and received it. That was all it was, and it was enough. She continued to run the facility the way she had always run it, carefully, consistently, without distraction. She had a small apartment nearby, a routine she kept, friends who knew her well enough to not ask about things she did not raise herself. She was not waiting for anything. That was perhaps the most significant thing about her, the absence of waiting. She had stopped waiting the day she stepped out through that gate. She had decided to build rather than wait, to move rather than hope, to become rather than wish. And that decision, made on a road in Enugu with one bag and a broken heart, had led her here, to this office, to this work, to this life that was entirely irreversibly her own. She did not consider it a victory over Mama Chioma. She considered it a victory over the version of herself that could have stayed small because of what had been done to her. That was the real story. Not the gate, not the hospital, even not the mercy. The real story was the decision, made in silence, on a road that led away from a closed gate, the decision to become someone the world would one day need. And the world, in its time, had agreed.
There's something this story wants to say directly to you. If you are watching this and you have been removed from something, a home, a relationship, a family, a position you deserved, listen carefully. What was done to you does not determine what you become. It only determines the starting conditions. What you build from there is entirely your own. Ngozi was thrown out with one bag and a broken heart. She did not become bitter. She did not spend 15 years plotting. She spent 15 years building. And the building was so complete, so solid, that when the person who had removed her needed help, there was no one else qualified to give it. That is not coincidence. That is the way life accounts for things. We want to believe that karma is loud, that it arrives with noise and spectacle, that the person who wronged us will suffer publicly, visibly, in ways we will be present to witness. But karma is quieter than that, and it is more complete. It does not always humiliate the person who hurt you. Sometimes it simply elevates you so far above what they did that their action becomes irrelevant. Sometimes the justice is not that they suffer, it is that you thrive so thoroughly that the only road they have left runs straight through you. And then the question becomes, what kind of person do you choose to be when that moment arrives? Ngozi chose mercy. Not because Mama Chioma deserved it, but because she had decided years ago who she was, and she was not willing to become someone different just because she finally had the power to do damage. That is character. And character, built quietly over years of hard work, is the only thing that cannot be taken from you. So if you are on a road right now that feels like an ending, keep walking. What looks like rejection is sometimes redirection. What looks like loss is sometimes the beginning of a life you could not have built any other way. Do not let what was done to you become the reason you stop. Let it become the reason you build. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If it moved you, if it reminded you of something or someone, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from. I read every single one. If you are new here, welcome. Subscribe and stay. There are more stories where this one came from. And to everyone who has been here from the beginning, you already know. Thank you.